Where did it come from that you wanted to write these stories to begin with?
You know, it's interesting that I've always told stories, but what I used to tell were movies. I would come out of the movie theater when I was, say, 10 or 11 years old, and we lived in an apartment building, and 3 or 4 of us would sit on the stairs, and somebody would say, "Tell us Captain Blood." And I'd tell them Captain Blood all the way through, and I told Captain Blood I don't know how many times. My sister used to read to me. She's 6 years older than I am. She used to read to me all the time. That got me interested in books. I remember when I was in the 5th grade, I read All Quiet on the Western Front, which was serialized in the Detroit Times then, and I wrote a play, which was put on in school, and had to be put on in the classroom because I used the desks, the rows of desks, as no man's land, the barbed wire. And I think it was interesting that at that time I was just up from Memphis, where we had lived for 2 or 3 years, so that in casting, I cast people who I didn't trust particularly as Germans, along with the only black kid in the school. I made him a German, you see. That play we put on in front of the principal, and that was it. It ran 1 day, but it was a start, I guess.
When you were recounting these movies, were you acting out the parts in dialect? I mean, your dialogue is so good.
I don't remember, but I think I did. I think to some extent I did. Errol Flynn, Basil Rathbone, Ross Alexander.
Because did you always have such a good ear? I mean, were you just born with this ear, or did you
well, the ear,
start listening better? How did you make your dialogue so?
I've always been interested in moving my stories with dialogue because I don't care for description. At least I'm not good at it. I'm not good at images. I stay away from similes and metaphors because I'm not good at them. I don't write what I can't write. I want my dialogue to describe who these people are and not I want those people to describe themselves, and I keep my nose out of it in the book. You don't find me in the book. You won't hear one note from me, I hope.
Given the enthusiasm of the reviews you've been getting, and you have these fans out there now, are you feeling freer in your writing? Are you changing any in terms of what you're putting into your books, what you're taking out?
That's interesting because as I read very good reviews, as I really learn what I'm doing, because if you ask me, if someone were to say, quoting from a reviewer, this is what you do, if I knew that you had to do that, I wouldn't know how. You know, I just tell a story. And what is most important to me is point of view. That's everything. If I get the right point of view for the scene's going to work. And I know what the purpose of the scene is. Because I don't know as I'm writing the story, I don't know what's going to happen beyond, say, the next chapter. In a broad scheme, I know, for example, that La Brava was going to entail extortion. But when I finally got to the point of describing the extortion, I thought, well, this is ridiculous. This is the simplest, dumbest extortion scheme I've ever seen. You'd better make something out of that.
Right.
The fact that it's an obvious...
But did you begin with La Brava's character? You saw him moving through whatever events that you would then describe.
But what happens, I get so caught up in the other people.
That's the joy of fiction. Right?
That I forget about my main character, so that my main character is very passive, and he's just sort of ambling along through the story, and he notices things, and a few things are happening to him. But then I think, it's about time for this guy to do something. If he's the hero, he'd better get going here. But I don't want to make him Dirty Harry. I don't want him to really shoot anybody unless he absolutely has to.
You know, in describing your violence, your guys just, when they finally have to, they shoot the gun.
And he shot him.
And they shot him.
Because I don't think you need to elaborate on shooting someone. There are people who do it very well, like Ira Levin. I remember in The Boys from Brazil when, I forgot who it was that shot, but And I study such things, how he shot this guy, the actual words he used. And they were beauties. He did it in a new and different way. And having written all those Westerns, I have fired an awful lot of guns. And so now I'm just saying he shot him.
End of paragraph.
He didn't shoot him sadly.
I don't think I ever did really overdo it with the roar of that 44 bucking in his hand. And I may have to some extent, but I think it's enough just to say that.
Would you describe yourself as a happy man?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Happy doing what you're doing?
Very, very, very happy. And it's funny that for the first 20 years or so, it was a real chore. Writing was a chore. And now I look forward to it. In the morning, I get to my desk about 9:30, and I really look forward to writing, which after 32 years, I think is hard to believe.
How unpopular this response is going to be.
Yeah.
Writing is supposed to be the longest, hardest
but
work in the world.
it doesn't have to be. I think if people are trying to write like writers, they're gonna tie themselves in knots. I think they have to find their sound. If you find the best way you most naturally tell a story, then it's going to be a pleasure to write. Now, it's still hard, and my God, all I do is rewrite, rewrite constantly. I write in longhand, and I scratch out, you know, I scratch out more than I keep, much, much more. But I'm having fun, and I get involved, I get immersed in it, in my story.